All right, so let's go ahead and start our mini lesson. So we're going to learn today how to do absolute value of equations, how to solve absolute value equations and inequalities. So all you need to do is follow along with the papers that I gave you guys from homework. The first thing that you need to do is that you need to know or remember, or I'm going to refresh your memory on what absolute value is. Absolute value is the distance that a number has from 0. So for example, the absolute value of -3 would be 3 because there's 3 units from -3, 1, 2, and 3, all the way to 0. The absolute value of 4 is 4 because there's 4 units from 4 to 0. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, in the same token, if I do absolute value of 3, that would still be 3 because there's 1, 2, and 3 units from 3 to positive, to 0. Which means that absolute values are never negative because they are distances. So they're never negative because they're distances, and distances are never negative. All right. So now that you know that, let's go ahead and start solving. 2x minus 11, the absolute value of 2x minus 11 equals 3, and we got to find all the values which make this equation true. All right, so the first thing that we need to understand is that because it's absolute value, it can be equal to 3, but it could also be equal to -3. So we have two equations that we need to solve. The first one would be 2x minus 11 equals 3, and notice that I took it out of the absolute value. And the next one would be 2x minus 11 equals -3. All right? Because again, the absolute value of 3 and the absolute value of -3 is the same. So to solve this is really easy. I'm just going to add 11 to both sides. I forgot to draw my line. So that would be 0. And then I get that 2x and 3 plus 11 would be 14. Then I'm going to divide by 2. And I get that x equals 7. Now for the next one is the same steps. This one is plus 11. So this would be 0. And this is 2x equals -3 plus 11. You got to take them away because they are opposite signs. And that would be divided by 2, x equals 4. So in this equation, the value of x could be equal to 7, but it could also be equal to 4. Now, you can also check these numbers, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and check real quick. So to check, just plug in that number in the original equation. So the original equation was 2x minus 11, the absolute value of that. Substitute the x for the 7. 2 times 7 would be 14. 14 minus 11 is absolute value of 3, and the absolute value of 3 equals 3. So that checks. Let's try the other one. Write the equation again to check. 2x minus 11 equals 3, the original equation, okay? Now plug in or substitute the 4. So it will be 2 times 4 minus 11. So 2 times 4 is 8. 8 minus 11 is absolute value of -3, and the absolute value of -3 is 3. So see both solutions checked for this equation. All right, let's try the next one. So for the next one, I have kind of the same, but then I have a 2 outside that parentheses, which means I have 2 of those parentheses, right? So it's still going to be the same. It's still going to be equal to 12 and -12. So I'm going to substitute the absolute values, or before I do that, let's go ahead and get rid of the 2. And to get rid of the 2, because it's multiplied, I can divide. So that will be absolute value of x plus 3 equals 6. And then take away the absolute values. X plus 3 equals 6. So to solve this, I got to do minus 3. So x equals 3. For the next one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get rid of the 2 first. Then I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the absolute value so that I can solve this. And then minus 3, and x equals negative 9. And you can also check if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and check real quick. Write the original equation. And then substitute the value of the number. Absolute value is kind of like parentheses. So you're going to have to do it before you multiply by the 2. So the absolute value of 6 is 6. And then, of course, 2 times 6 is 12. And that indeed is equal to 12. Let's do the next one. Write down the original equation. Sorry, it looks a little crooked. And substitute the value. So do the absolute value first. Negative 9 plus 3 is negative 6. But the absolute value of negative 6 is 6 because it is the same distance from 0 as the positive 6. And 2 times 6 is 12, which is indeed equal to 12. All right, let's do the next one. All right, so these ones are inequalities. So the inequalities are a little different. You're going to have to work a little bit more with them. What you're going to do is you're going to take this number and you're going to write it in the front exactly like it is, the same. Notice how I put the same inequality, but instead of a positive 7, it's going to be a negative 7. So now I'm going to take it away from the absolute value. So from here to here, I just took away the absolute value. So this is what I did to kind of do this. I cover the last part, and that's my first inequality. So negative 7 is less than x minus 4. And then I cover this first part, and that's my second inequality. So x minus 4 is less than 7. And I go ahead and I solve. To solve, I'm going to do plus 4. X is greater than, and negative 7 plus 4 equals negative 3. So x has to be greater than negative 3. Now for this one, I'm going to solve the same way, but the answers are going to be different because this one was negative 7 and that one is positive 7. So this would be 0, and x is less than 11. So what I'm going to do is, x has to be less than 11, but x also has to be greater than negative 3. So to graph it, I'm going to go ahead and make a circle on through a negative 3 and a circle on 10. Now these are not shaded circles, they're not closed circles because it does not include the negative 3 or the 11. It doesn't have the less than or equal part. It has the less part, but it doesn't have the equal part. It does not have the equal part underneath it. So because it doesn't, it is not a closed circle, it's an open circle, but it does not include that number. Now x has to be less than negative 3. The numbers, x has to be greater than negative 3. So the numbers that are greater than negative 3 go this way. And x has to be less than 11. I'm sorry, I put it on 11. It's 11, not 10. I'm sorry, babies. It's 11. That's an 11. And the numbers that are less than 11 would be here. So solutions for this inequality, absolute value inequality, is any of those that are going to be high. Any of those that are highlighted. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so let's go ahead and write the inequality again. Remember, you're going to take this part and you're going to write it in the front, and it's going to have this same inequality, but it's going to be a negative 10. On the next step, I'm going to get rid of the absolute value. And then I'm going to cover the last part, and that's my first inequality. And the last part, and then I'm going to cover the first part, and that's my inequality. All right, so let's solve. To solve, I got to say minus 3. That would be 0, negative 10, and negative 3 is negative 13. And there's a negative x. Now remember, when I talk about the invisible 1, we have an invisible 1 over here. We are dividing. To get rid of that invisible 1, we got to divide by negative 1. And when we divide by negative numbers, we got to switch the inequality. So instead of less than is going to be greater than. And negative 13 divided by negative 1 would be 13. Same thing over here, minus 3, that would be 0. So negative x is less than 7. Again, we have another invisible 1. So in order to get rid of that negative 1, we're going to divide by negative 1. So because we divide, that sign will switch. So instead of less than is greater than. And x is now greater than negative 7. All right. So x is greater than negative 7 and less than 13. Okay? So I'm going to put an open circle on 13. An open circle on negative 7. Because it doesn't have that, it's not equal to that number, I cannot close them in. X has to be less than 13. And x has to be greater than negative 7. So anything that's a solution of these two will be right in the middle of those two open circles. All right, and the last one. All right, so this one is a little bit bigger. So let's go ahead and rewrite it. 2 absolute value to x plus 10 plus 4 is greater than or equal to 10. So the first thing that I need to do is get rid of that and that. I get rid of a 4 by subtracting 4. Because that would be 0. And then I get rid of the 2 by dividing by 2. So I divide it by 2. I get rid of the 2. 6 divided by 2 would be 3. Now I need to write this guy all the way to the front. And I keep my sign, the inequality, the same way, but then with a negative 3. So let's go ahead and get rid of the absolute value. And then do my little trick where you cover the back. That's your first inequality. cover the front, and that's your second inequality. All right, so let's solve. Minus 10, minus 10, divided by 2, divided by 2. Negative 13 divided by 2, that's half of 13, that will be negative 6.5. And x has to be less than that. All right, for the next one, minus 10, that's 0. So 2x is greater than or equal to negative 7. Then 2, get rid of the 2, you divide by 2. And half of negative 7 would be negative 3.5. So let's go ahead and do circles on negative 6.5, which is right in the middle, and at negative 3.5. Oh, I did it on the wrong spot, I'm sorry. 6.5 is between 6 and 7. And then negative 3.5 is between 3 and 4. Okay, now these ones are closed circles because it includes 6.5. So I'm going to go ahead and shade it in. Now, x is greater than or equal to negative 3.5. But x is also less than or equal to negative 6.5. Now, I like to put it together like this, because that's probably how you're going to see it on the snapshot on the test. But then when I graph, I like to do it like this, because it has to be bigger than, has to be less, I'm sorry, than negative 6.5. So the numbers that are less are this way. And x has to be greater than or equal to negative 3.5. So the numbers that are greater are this way. So basically, in here, everything could be a solution except for any number that's between those two circles because it's not highlighted. So anything from here all the way to infinity, anything from here all the way to negative infinity. All right. That was your homework for today. I hope you guys understand it a little bit for tomorrow. And I will see you guys tomorrow. You have a good night.